Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Open Spaces Thursday meeting for Gimbalabs. Today is May Day, May 1st, 2025. You're probably joining us on YouTube or somewhere far in the future, or just later on this afternoon when it gets posted. We join up together, all the Gimbalabs folks, to talk about governance and how basically to answer the question, how are we spending our time and resources here at Gimbal Labs. Um, this is sort of a special session because it's a monthly review session and we're in our Notion and we're reviewing projects. And I'm hosting along with my buddy Harsha. Harsha, say hello to the good people out there on YouTube.
Hey, hey.
All right. And folks are here like James and Andrew and Adrian just joined in, or he's here and Lewis is here. Um, thank you for being here. And away we go. The next one we were talking about is the Dandelion. Um, Feels like they're going along, pretty good. I know that they're building out nodes for people and having weekly meetings, and that seems to be going great. Language burials, and this is one from Alex and the Marlowe PBL. Is Sebastian's not here? Any updates from anyone
Yeah, so he and I
here?
were just talking about this one as well. I got some quality time with him last week. So Marlowe, it's not clear that it has a future. Um,
Okay.
and so we're
Oh,
thinking of ways to maybe be creative with this. And one current possibility we are exploring is whether or not we can work with the Catalyst team to refactor this proposal and just to deliver a midnight PBL instead. We
ah,
kind of recognize that midnight is certainly a going concern. And there's a couple of devs led by Eric Romero, who's just a gem. We had a good time getting to know each other last week. And he's working on the mesh team on midnight integrations and has a lot of gratitude for what Gimbal Labs has provided educationally over the years.
nice.
And so he's got a lot of energy to maybe support a midnight PBL. And so, we just have to be realistic. Basically, the story here is back in fund. I think this was a fund 13
Uh,
one.
Fun. Yeah, I was just looking for it. I think it is a Fun 13, so it should be open. Harsha, could you try to track that down to see if it's a if we can find
I'll
the
do that. I'll do
the
that. Yeah.
funded proposal? Um, but basically, the possibility of transferring to a midnight, which would be awesome in my
Yeah.
mind.
So more to come. We'll find out if that's even possible. But yeah, the Marlowe PBL course proposal was funded and the Marlowe core development was not. And I think the Marlowe team has been trying to figure out how they stand up on their own, separate from IOG. And they are building in a world where so much other tooling has been built that Marlowe itself just may not be necessary anymore, right? And so that's not my decision to make whether it is or isn't necessary. But if it's not being built, we might as well try to turn this project into something that's really relevant.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. And that's I mean, a wonderful, because things change so quickly. That's one of the reasons why we do this. And, now folks, we can kind of understand and pivot. It's one of the fantastic things about why we do these monthly reviews. Thank you very much. Okay, here's one that's near and dear, and that is the Asteria front end with T3 app and mesh. Um, Harsha and um, Andrew and I are working on this along with Manuel, and we've been making great progress. Uh, I've kind of taken in trying to learn the tailwind and the visual side of getting a Next.js, a T3 app thing going up. I I could demo, but I think that might be a little bit out of the scope of just right now. if Harsha or Andrew, Harsha was working on some mesh stuff. Andrew was working on all kinds of stuff. Um, each basically we're breaking out into the different components. Any, we're doing weekly meetings on Friday, so we're all oars in the water. Uh, and a lot of stuff has gone on this last week. Anything to report, Andrew or Harsha?
Yeah, so last week we implemented like a minting,
Yeah,
so just like minting tokens page where you're minting with your with your key, but every time you mint with your key, there's a separate policy ID being created. Currently in Mesh, there is something called Forge script, where the same policy ID keeps popping up, but we implemented it in such a way that each time they mint with the key, there's a different policy ID that shows up. Yeah.
yeah. That might be sounding a little bit geeky, but we definitely have been geeking out on it. Um, cool. All right, all right. Let's any questions from the group about that one? This one is not a Catalyst funded proposal, but it is directly funded by Gimbalabs in this fund 13 sustain and maintain Gimbal
It
Labs.
is from Fund 12, actually.
Oh, oh, the fund 12. Okay, yeah. That makes sense. Um, Now this one, and Harsha, you might take because these are the which spaces, and the crux about this one is that we get inflows from Catalyst and sort of outflows from this which spaces. This is one of the main things about this Catalyst proposal, sustain and maintain Gimbal Labs, which we got in Fund 12 and in Fund 13, and this which spaces which basically helps our sustain and maintain tasks. Um, the and these have a lot of basically around the facilitation um, and keeping up with regular meetings. But there's a couple of other things in there. Any other um, updates with which spaces, James or Harsha?
I mean, all the spaces have been happening as per schedule, except for last week because of the Builder Fest. But outside of that, I think everything is happening as per schedule. And if we can do it for one more month or 2 more months, I think we should be able to get all the funding from Catalyst.
Yeah. And I guess we're at milestone 3 of 4.
So we finished 2 milestones. We have 2 more milestones to go.
Cool. Yeah. All right. All right. That's awesome. And then let's see. Community governed maintenance, the Plutus PBL course. This one's in
Yeah,
progress.
I can go for that one.
Oh, nice.
So we're really nearly at the finish line there. Well, actually, we'd kind of tried to set not a hard stop, but we'd hoped to be finished by the end of April, but it's just gone over. We Well, in terms of like all the initial updates, we're kind of done. We're just at the final stage of Q&A, and I've just been going through some stuff with Mo earlier to just help get that finished off. But unfortunately, there's just been a couple of spanners in the works just at the end, um, and that was nothing major. I think something to do with the links with Andamio, which I think we're going to get sorted. But it really is very close to finishing now. So I think we'd hope maybe if we hadn't finished today, then the end of this week. But I think it might go into next week. But this time next week, fingers crossed, we'll report back that we're done.
Excellent. Excellent. Um, is there anything that you need from us, I guess? I guess that's always the implied sort of thing. But it feels like you and the rest of the team, Cesar, Monique, um, and Lawrence are the full team. That's
Caesar,
cool.
myself, Caesar, Monique and Lawrence.
Yeah,
Well, the thing's going to come in a bit under budget, really, because we haven't. I think there was a bit of money in there for uh, asking for experts, something like that. Oh, and there's only four of us as well. So I think we've agreed, right? It would be okay for us to take the fifth person's money, but
yeah.
not sure what we're going to do with the rest. There was a couple of ideas thrown around, but once it's all complete, then we'll come to. Well, yeah, it might be like a sub proposal or something that comes in after it. And that
Okay.
will revolve around a bit around the videos, really, because we've done some videos, but we realize it's so much work in producing new videos, it's a bit out of scope for what we're asked to do.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe we would consider opening that up to the community to actually and get paid to create videos. But we'll see. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll throw that around a bit.
Yeah, that's there. And this is actually, and Harsha, wouldn't you think, this kind of leads us to one of these one of the issues that I wanted to talk about, um, the about what to do with sort of leftover funds or funds that aren't completely distributed. And it gets us into the Andamio parts of like project stuff, which is something important about how we do things in Gimbalabs. Um, but that's a great update. With that in mind, moving over to the paused projects, and the one that I'm talking about is the Playground Season 4. Um, is now, what do you think, Harsha? Is this the time to move into
Yeah, I mean, I
these
think
projects?
we got through all the in-progress proposals, so you might as well
Does
get to that.
anyone that's joined, or is anybody like, ooh, I really want to say another thing about a project that we've missed? Even James, anything like that?
Nothing comes directly to mind.
Okay. I feel bad for the D-rep, and I would love to get into like real talk about the
Yeah.
about what's going on with the D-rep and the budget stuff. Possibly a little bit out of scope, but this is where it would touch it, as we've Scott, who's really focused on governance issues, um, and I have been working pretty consistently, but we couldn't really get anything together. Um, we're still looking for someone uh, to sort of commit or some type of process or like how we solve being a D-rep for our community. And so if anybody has any ideas around that, please feel free to jump in. Um, oh, but speaking about jumping in, one of the things, so like this one, we could move hackathon, and I'll make that choice because it's always fun to change the status of a project. And as I'm the owner of this project, I think I'm going to move from paused to backlog here.
And I
Um,
have a quick update on that one. We had talked about maybe doing the first week in June, but
oh,
um, but I can't do it that week because I just have some commitments so Andamio is now part of Cardano Foundation's Venture Hub. And there's an on-site visit to the CF offices that same week. So I'll be traveling for that. Um, and maybe dropping by Berlin Blockchain Week to talk about Andamio. So hoping to represent some of the work out there in the world, but definitely not lost that we want to run some kind of in-person hackathon sometime in the next 6 months in the Northeast United States.
oh yeah. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course, yeah. Um, and yeah, somewhere in the Northeast. And so people that are listening, sometime this summer, wouldn't it be great if we found a few days to meet up? Somewhere here in the Northeast would work out great. We've got lots of airports and things around here. Uh, eh, so yeah, let's keep that in we should move that to planning then, really. I want to change the status. If you
Sure.
guys don't know this, like
Yeah.
one of the great things about this is you can move things around. And so, yeah, let's do that. Changing status to planning.
Awesome.
All right. Oh, good. I love the idea of a hackathon. And I really think like, what is a Gimbal Labs hackathon? Let's move this one over to planning. Okay, cool. Um, in the this is the one that I want to talk about, Playground. Um, Playground season 4. If you guys don't know about the Playground, Playground is one of the sort of core parts of Gimbal Labs. And I'll kind of camp out on this for a bit because um, one of the things that I want to show is um, all of the past playgrounds. So I created a spreadsheet of all of the past playgrounds. Oh, here we go. Closing out Playground season 4. That's sort of what I'm hoping to do. I'm hoping to move paused into done. That's sort of my intention here. Um, here are here's a Google sheet of all the ones that Steve and I created or facilitated. What's interesting is you can see all the ones that happened in the previous season. Quite a bit. There's awesome stuff in here. And it's been going on for season 1, season from 2021, just tons of sessions. And so, but here in the middle, we just weren't getting, we had planned to do 18 sessions. And we got a budget through to do those with this budget and this um with this amount of funding. And so since we paused it, we're hoping to sort of now close it out and how to distribute the funds and whatnot. And talking to Steve, he was just like, well, he's of one mind. It's like, well, we didn't finish the project, so we shouldn't be funded. And I kind of feel like that's not exactly right. Like that we should be funded for the parts that we did. And so I'm just trying to see sense check from the community. And this is my last sort of thing from Steve was he's like, well, if Gimbal Labs can decide to make payments on that bit of the treasury, then he would accept it. And I'm okay with that too. But what do you think? What should we do with a project that got halfway through? And so that's up to for discussion now. We feel it.
Why can't it just be remunerated for the ones you've done? That would make perfect sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I didn't even realize. So you haven't, yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. Just
So what should we do with the leftovers? So we did roughly half. And so that means that there would be roughly half of this. So there would be roughly 3,000 ADA that would be distributed. And so then we would have a 3,000 ADA, that needs a home. We could put it into the general fund. We could, what should we do with it, do you think? And you could jump in or raise your hand to talk or
I mean,
you
I
got an
guess
idea.
the reason it's important is that we're setting a precedent right now, right? But
Yeah.
I mean, so it doesn't sound like anybody has objections to using partial funds. That part feels easy, right?
Yeah.
If a project is funded and you do half of it, then you pay each other half of it. And just to zoom out a little bit, right? Like because of the circle-based approach we are using, once you are on a project team that is funded, it's really the prerogative of that team to decide how those funds ought to be used, right? So the
Yes.
PBL maintainers, 4 people have these 20,000 ADA, and if Andrew, Mo, the two of you, and then along with Lawrence and Caesar's here too. Great, we have 3 out of the 4 maintainers here. Hey y'all. But like,
Hey.
if the 4 people on this team just decided to pay each other 5,000 ADA each, that would be fine because that's how circles work. Now, it sounds like they're deciding to do a little bit more with it than that, right? And say, well, we're going to pay ourselves this much and we're going to reserve some funds for this other work that we identified. That's amazing. And it's amazing to be part of a community where people in a circle are making that decision, but there's no expectation that people must make that decision. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, same thing here.
Yeah. Okay. And that makes, yeah. So the scope of those funds, and that's a really, that solves a lot of sort of questions. So it's like the scope of those funds are in the circle. It's sort of like, and in Andamio, it has that sort of built in. It's just like, well, once it's in the treasury for that project, it's in the treasury. There's not a real, now it can be like the social contract could be broken if you're like, oh, well, we're gonna, not do the thing and then just pay us. And people may raise eyebrows, but it's something that in the moment it's a more future thing than rather than a present thing.
So,
And Harsha has a hand up. Go ahead, Harsha.
Yeah, so that is my concern as well. Like, uh, some of us might be worried that like if we break the social contract and just like not do work and pay ourselves anyway, like we might lose face. But that might not be the concern for everyone. I think, what if like this is my first project and I don't particularly care to be around Gimbalabs? I got my money, I'm out of here.
right.
Yeah.
So we need appropriate safeguards, right? And then we also need mechanisms for people acting in good faith to ask each other, right? Like, hey, you can always ask for advice, right? Like I think maybe the advice process is something that we could grow into a bit more here at Gimbal Labs. Just because we have independent circles, doesn't mean they can't ask for help from outside, right? You have responsibility delegated to a circle. It's the work of that circle to move with their mandate. But the advice process is usually the lifeblood of organizations that operate like this. And the advice process says, well, yeah, hey, like anytime you need that kind of support, you can also go out and solicit advice from parties that might help you make a decision.
Uh, Absolutely. So this is another part of the S3 or this sort of circle based process. Nori would have a paragraph or two on this, and it's what I always think of when I think about the advice process. It's sort of not necessarily asking for permission or approval or consent, like that's already been handed over, but you can ask for advice, and that's basically, yeah, that's what I'm asking for in the for the playground thing. It's just like, hey, we want to do this. Is what is the advice? And then Andrew, a trusted colleague, is just like, oh well, it seems natural that and there'd be no problem with. And then James, was like, oh yeah, that seems like there's nobody like jumping up and down and saying, no, that's not the right way to do it. It's sort of an advice process. Um, and and yes, that is a very organic. It's kind of like sense taking. You're like, I want to do this, and if everybody's generally cool, it's not necessary to go through the giant thing. Um, but it is a part of of this new way of governance type of collaboration. Okay, so that sounds good. Um, and that does make, I do think that fits in this playground or any project that's closing out and there's, we have consent to get into a proposal, when we start things, but there's also sort of consent as we stop things and as we close out proposals. Um, and and we are sort of setting a precedent and pioneering how we might do this. Um, yeah, yeah. Any more thoughts on that? Um, uh, Here, and this might be in the next 30 minutes as we kind of bring the plane down to land. I would love, and it's always, oh, I see Jorge's got his hand up. Go ahead, Jorge.
Hello, guys, again.
Hey.
Yeah, so regarding this distribution of funds and the social contract, I've been in several blockchains communities already. I was part of the BitShares community, one of the very first decentralized exchanges. It collapsed due to this very issue, the issue of funds distribution and governance. I was also part of the EOS community, which was the biggest ICO ever, about $4.4 billion collected that disappeared, and the community also collapsed because of the very same reasons. And currently, I see Cardano in general facing the same challenges. My experience is that social contract by itself is far from enough, and also the incentives of distributing funds first so that people delivers some work and get some other funds later are ineffectual. They are not sufficient to actually get a very good outcome. What tends to happen is that people, by their very nature, use the funds first and don't deliver, or deliver low quality products. So from the EOS community, there appeared after some time this new protocol, which is called fractal democracy, which solves most of these issues. The core of the protocol attacks the well. How long can I elaborate about this?
Keep going. You know what? If you, yeah, and sometimes I like that. You tell me. Would you like a 2-minute timer or a 3-minute timer?
I just don't want to
Keep going.
Thank you.
Words and
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for asking. It's kind of like playing cards, and you're like, okay, I can set a timer if you want to try to stay in that, but 3-4 minutes would be perfect. You're going great. This is awesome. Fractal democracy. Tell me, 4 minutes?
Yeah, 4 minutes, fine.
Let's do it.
So the core of the problems lie in the incentives, and there are several misaligned incentives. One of them being is that when you provide funding for some entity, you, especially in these proof of stake systems, you give that entity an extra amount of power, an extra amount of voting. So you begin to create a feedback loop, because that entity can use that extra power to then vote itself again to gain more funds, to gain more power. And that feedback loop ends up in centralization. So that's one issue. The other issue is the issue of deliverance, the fact that people can receive the funds first and then disappear. That's another big issue. Another issue that comes from the first one is that if you give funds to someone, aside from having the incentive to use those funds to self-perpetuate in power, he can also, he will be incentivized to use those funds to bring, even if he wants to deliver, he will use those funds to bring his closest associates to work with him. But then those associates also receive funding from the first person, and so a small cartel begins to form. Just like in regular politics, just like in regular nations. So the solution fractal democracy proposes is to first not distribute any funding in advance. Simply all the funds remains in the treasury. Then every week, people gathers in meetings like this one and present their contributions, their work. It can be anything. It can be just 1 hour of work, or even just coming to the meeting to help the community reach consensus. And in that meeting, let's suppose there is 1,000 people in the meeting from all the Cardano community. And at that meeting, the community divides itself in small groups of size 6 or 5 people. Within each group, each participant will report what his contribution to the community is. And within that group, those 6 people will have to arrive consensus to who was the biggest contributor. And only after that contribution is being like validated by the same community, then the funds are distributed, and they are distributed in a Pareto distribution form, so that the biggest contribution receive much more than the second, and the second contribution receives much more funds than the third one. And the good thing is that during that meeting, maybe some of the best contributors got randomly assigned to the same group. So one really good contributor got really low funded because he was ranked last. But the next meeting, because the distribution is totally random, that contributor that deserved better will be in another group with other people, and then he will receive better. And because of the nature of the central limit theorem from probability, in the long run, after let's say 10 weeks, the funds will begin to be distributed accordingly to the right distribution that the community every week has been validating. So this protocol eliminates cartel formation, the need to.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, there you go.
It's
Keep going for a bit.
over?
Yeah, that was 4 minutes. Yep.
Okay, so that's pretty much the
But yeah,
core.
so wrap up. No, we're that's wonderful. I think everyone can agree that was valuable. But now sort of wrap up, and then we can talk about it.
Yeah, so that's pretty much the core of the idea. Not distribute funds in advance, but after contributions have been presented, and let the community in a randomly and periodic process validate those contributions constantly. It's been pretty remarkable, successful. Thank you.
And which community is it again that you mentioned it a couple of times, but I didn't quite get it. How do you spell it? Or could you put it in the chat?
Yeah, I'll put it on the chat.
And then, and anyone want to like comment? Yeah, and we could set up, but we have 30 minutes left in the meeting. We like to have a few 5 minutes to check out, and we'll turn off the recording, and that stuff. So yeah, we've got time. I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes, and I see Harsh has his hand up.
So I was just curious. So when the community makes decisions, what is the incentive for the community to make the right decisions, and what exactly even is the community in this case?
That question is for me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're assuming pretty much like in Bitcoin that the majority of the community wants the best for the community. And what the community don't want is that any given individual profits from the work of others. The community doesn't want free riders. So if you have 1,000 people community, if you distribute them randomly in groups of 5 or 6, it is very unlikely that any given individual will end up in the same group with his closest peer. So he will constantly have to actually deliver and present work that the community finds valuable, and then receive the funding. So I think the answer to your question is that, the community wants the best for the community almost by definition. What usually happens is that every individual, when receiving funds, has to ponder the best for the community versus his immediate desire, like selfish desire, and very frequently the second outweighs the first.
Dude, I love it. Yeah, and Jorge, thanks for jumping in, and I don't want to, but you've spoken really eloquently about this. I really like that second part because the do the things first sort of feels like little fish. And little fish I've been thinking about quite a bit lately. But then there's something in that old or new school facilitation technique of breaking into smaller groups and the scaling necessary and the sort of idea of a random group to sort of bust up like cliques or cartels is really great, and to sort of disperse the that nature to sort of like pick a leader at which we burn out. That's the big takeaway from all these communities is that someone takes the lead and then they get burnt out, and then we're all like kind of like, ah, crap, but there is the hope of decentralization and a more distributed autonomy. And I think Harsha was talking about was like that autonomy is the thing that makes quality projects as opposed to like funding, for instance. Like if you pay somebody, uh, then the quality might actually go down as opposed to somebody that is just working on their own autonomous, like a personal project. And it feels like this kind of gets to that because um, actually Harsha's sort of has he built a project and then he came and asked for like with your AI transcript meeting transcript social media posting. I feel like that fits in here, you know? And we have it's one of the features of Gimbalabs is the idea of you know, of agile and shifting and changing our focus and really deciding, you know, period to period, like what we want to do with our time and resources. And thankfully, we have reputation and we have resources and trust from Catalyst, who funds us, and with all these many partners, and those are a commons. That is something that we together have built up, and really deciding what to do with that, and doing these experiments. Like not getting rigid in the structure. Does that ring true for folks here? Does that feel like Gimbalabs? I see Sebastian. I want to acknowledge Sebastian, who has popped in, and not to put you on the spot, Seb, but and yeah, from new people, from old people, anything to
Yeah,
does this
I think
sound like something?
we work on a huge amount of trust here, and I think people come and like you just I don't know, it's hard to explain really. We work on a lot of trust, but we
Yeah,
also deliver really. I mean, I've
yeah,
been around Gimbalabs for a year now, and if you're looking back on the history, that there's very few examples of where funds have been wasted. It's that it's yeah.
right,
It's I think the open spaces. I think what we do here, we're very much an open book, and I think that just builds trust from the beginning. Everything we do here is pretty open, and that's kind of the first impression I got when I started coming to these open spaces. Like these guys mean business, and that there's a lot of trust extended, and I think you do that. You treat people as adults, and that's what you get. You get adults. You treat people as
right,
children, you get children. Uh,
right.
and I think Gimbalabs does a very good job of treating people as adults as soon as they walk through the door. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. How does that feel for the rest of the gang? Like, yeah, Jorge, did you?
Yeah, um, I wanted to add that one of the advantages of randomizing people, well, the whole fractal democracy process is that it's scalable. One of the challenges these initiatives, for example, like Gimbalabs or even Cardano have, is the difficulty of assessing new people. For example, if you have here a group of 20 people, most of them know each other and trust each other, then that's really nice. But in in the pursuit of scaling this thing, for example, bringing another 100 people, we all know that it's guaranteed that in those 100 people, there will be several scammers because we have been part of Telegram groups and Discord groups. So it's a big challenge doing this escalation. But if you set aside a part of the budget to this process, then those scammers will be randomized within the rest of the community, and they'll before receiving funding have to earn a reputation, and that process will repeat week after week after week. So it will be really hard for them to co-opt the system before actually delivering anything, and so the system becomes much more scalable, like really scalable. And the other thing I wanted to say is that this reputation that you earn week by week within a randomized community in which you have to validate again and again your work is very similar to the concept of respect, like the social concept of respect that people have within regular societies. So what the guys in the Fractal Democracy Protocol did was to call this reputation token respect itself. And it worked wonderfully, because the one thing that people want more than money is respect, reputation, especially male people. So yeah, I wanted to add that to my initial points. Thank you.
Oh yeah, man.
I think that fits in quite well with what Andamio is doing, because in a way, Andamio is building reputation as well. And maybe Jorge should get introduced to Andamio and we can get feedback on what he thinks.
Ooh,
I'm
is
taking
this
notes. Yeah, Jorge, I would love to give you an opportunity to be an early user tester of Andamio as we roll out that system. That's not something we will cover all at once today. But yeah, I think this could be the start of a really exciting conversation. Thanks for being here.
for sure? And Jorge, you are on the Discord, and you made contact with Andrew, who is known as Nature Dopes. Um, uh, so if you want to put in the chat your to make sure that people recognize you and tie that reputation that you built by doing this presentation on fractal democracy to your to transfer it to make it portable over to your Discord community, please let us know your Discord handle, so that we're like, oh yeah, I know this guy, he does good work. Do we want in the last 10 or so minutes, because I would love to take a look at Andamio and about like the contribution. And James, if you're willing, we could take a little tour over there, or
Totally.
we could double click on something else.
And Caesar's point is critical right here. We were actually talking
Oh,
about this last week. Nelson was talking about like, hey, what are the current biggest vulnerabilities of Andamio? And this is precisely the thing we surfaced, is that it's the person setting up a treasury who we may want to be a little bit more rigorous with how we're handling that part. So certainly some R&D still to come right there. And that's a great point.
and Caesar wrote this. And Caesar, you don't mind if I read this into the so that the folks listening in could just give me a thumbs up and I'll read it
Yeah,
in.
go ahead.
Okay. Um, I think that this is how Andamio is structured. This idea of putting in a contribution and then being rewarded after that. That you prove you know the material, and if you contributed something, then you get paid. That does bring up the question for me: who is to say that the person setting up the treasury isn't going to run off with the funds, to be a bad actor, for instance, and that the reputation thing is the interesting concept. Um, and it gets us into like how we build reputation and how we um, signify it in a portable way, that that you don't have to, or the dream is that well, like how to bring it with you. And maybe that's a feature, not a bug, that each community that you go to, you have to sort of, in the fractal democracy, each random group that you get put in, you have to sort of reestablish. It's like, oh yeah, I'm Newman. This is what I'm about. I'm not bullshitting. Like I'm sort of coherent through the whole thing. And I'm yeah. I'm thinking
Yeah.
about that the AI headset guy. What was the dude that was doing interview like tech interviews, and he had like a headset with the AI feeding him answers and stuff. Um, I am not doing that, by the way.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm actually not really sure.
No, I
Oh
think what
man.
Jorge brings up a really good point. And I say that reputation thing is an interesting concept because without going too deep into the details, it would be interesting to have maybe something where it says like this person's pretty reputable at this point, and you could just, kind of take kind of like how reviews work now on Amazon, right? The higher the review, the more trusted that person is. But that also like a side conversation, or I guess to that point, is the smaller the community. I mean, I think we all know each other pretty well here, and it's, so maybe that isn't needed. And as long as you're in the group long enough, that social trust would just kind of be set. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's a reputation as a function of time, and that we know, and participation. Uh, I know that you know, like I know you through the maintainers, and you're active on the Discord, and I see you, and it, like the types of things that you put in, or, like, yeah, um, but can we support it? And then, to be honest, man, it is true, like the bad actor thing. Like people can be friends, and then for whatever reason, whatever tide turning personal issues happen, and then they do things that are out of character, that or anomalous with what I would expect. Um, and yeah, that I don't think that goes away. I think just people fall off, um, or some circumstance happens. Um, and yeah, I mean, have you ever been in a community where you're like, oh, I trusted this person, and then something, broke that trust, and you get burned. I got burned. And I can, like, eh, yeah, I don't think that goes away. I think it just gets somewhat mitigated, or something, you know, but it does sting. It does hurt.
So I can address one of your points. In the last iteration of the process, what we did was well, regarding the question of who manages the funds, what we did is after, let's say, the 10th week of collecting these scores of reputation, of respect, you will have a moving average of the reputation for each individual. So what we did was to take a certain number of individuals, which is a parameter, with the highest moving average, like the latest 12 weeks moving average of reputation. And those people constituted the council, the committee. Those guys were responsible to handling the multi-sig with the treasury. And the wonderful thing is that, for example, if you have someone today in any community, let's say, for example, Cardano, someone who does something unethical, most of the time, that person, after doing this action, will disappear. And that's a shame, because no one is really bad forever. What usually happens is that people does bad things sometimes, but then they come back and they can do really good things. So in the fractal democracy process, if you do something bad, then your reputation loses, but you're like punished immediately. So you don't have an incentive to disappear and leave the community. You can come back and then rebuild your reputation. And because we have everything quantified, like this moving average, then you can, don't leave the community because of your mistakes, or you simply pay the price and go ahead. So that's a solution for, well, one possible solution for the managing of the funding.
Yeah.
That said, the process has some weakness. One big weakness is that because of the randomization, you can face people ranking contributions that they don't know anything about, like something really hardcore cryptographic contribution from zero knowledge being ranked by someone who just knows about nothing about that. That's an issue that pretty much as is happening currently with the budget in the Cardano community. Some people that has no idea about, some D reps that have no idea about some issues voting about them. That's a challenge the current version has.
And have you had any instances where like the system becomes more of like a popularity contest? Because by the end of the day, you could do great work, but if you suck at speaking to people and communicating, people would still think, you're no good.
Well, Jorge, let me before you answer, because that is something that I thought about. Because right now we're speaking in the large group, even though our group is like 10 people. If you break out and we were to go to like a 2 or 3 person small group, this randomized group, a fractal, if we were to fractal out, like we had 3 groups of 3, like there would be different participation, and it would be less sort of public speaking. So that's how I would answer this, but I'm interested to hear what Jorge has.
So to Harsha, the answer to your question is yes. Those individuals that happen to be more eloquent tend to be more successful in this process in the short term. In the long term, however, the fact is that these communities aren't that big. I mean, it's hard to find one of these communities which is bigger than 100 people. So in the long term, after, let's say, a few meetings, people will tend to know who is who. And even those people that aren't that extrovert will tend to be ranked fairly. But yes, there is an advantage in this process for whoever is more eloquent or convincing, or even more uh, dedicated in his way of presenting evidence of his contributions. Some people will bring a very nice PowerPoint presentation. Some other people will just present their GitHub. So whatever is more appealing to the human eye will tend to be voted higher. So that's another weakness of the process. But still, it is a lot better than what usually tends to happen.
Yeah, like that's a concern, but it's much better than the other thing. Yeah, 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 yeah. What do you think, Harsha? Yeah, that I do think that's a great point. Like getting people to participate. And with that in mind, I propose that because this is a lovely conversation and we're recording it for YouTube, and I know there's somebody that's listening, and I want that person to like actually join us here on a Thursday. So let's turn off the recording. Let's say goodbye to our future listeners, and then have a nice open conversation and check out before our tech stand up, which will happen immediately following this meeting. What does everybody think about that idea? Or we can the option is, or we can keep this discussion going with the.
This sounds.
Thanks, Andrew. Andrew's going to drop out.
Thanks for facilitating. And yeah, Jorge, once again, hope this is the start of a longer conversation. Thanks for being here.
Truly. Okay, if everybody's in, or if does anyone want to say anything else to the recording while we're recording, or are you okay with turning off the recording and doing our checkout and getting ready for the tech stand up? All right, I will say goodbye to YouTube. Thank you so much Please join us. Please join the Discord. We're looking forward to great things and what comes next here at Gimbalabs. And we really would love to have your contribution and participation with what's going on. Bring your projects. Bring your contribution any way you can. All right. Bye bye, YouTube.